ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says the party's leaders will ask for a meeting with former President Thabo Mbeki. That's after Mbeki wrote a letter which has now been leaked to Deputy President of the ANC in the country, Paul Mashatile, asking why the party's parliamentary caucus voted against proceeding with an inquiry into the Phala Phala matter involving President Cyril Ramaphosa. The governing party blocked that move after an independent panel found there were grounds to believe that President Cyril Ramaphosa may have violated the Constitution and his oath of office. This was after a burglary in 2020 at his farm in Limpopo, with thieves made off with foreign currency. Ramaphosa has denied that he was involved in a cover-up in that instance. Mbeki is also questioned in his letter why the ANC has blocked an inquiry, an ad hoc committee, or the establishment thereof, of a committee that would basically explore allegations of wrongdoing at Eskom. Mbalula says the party will only comment on Mbeki's letter once they've met with him. Ramaphosa has also had something to say about this. Our reporter Atim Tongana did ask him as he was leaving a National Council of Provinces meeting today.
The Secretary General is handling this matter, so it's going to be discussed in the ANC, and I will wait for that discussion. And that's as simple as all that.
Let's talk more about this now with Professor Ricky Mukonza, political analyst. A very good evening to you, sir. Grateful for your time. Is former President Mbeki right to say that the way in which the ANC caucus in Parliament has acted on the Phala Phala issue is quite similar to how MPs closed ranks around former President Jacob Zuma at the time of the Ngandla scandal?
Good evening, Mbeki. Good evening to your viewers. Indeed, a very interesting letter from the former president, Thabo Mbeki, where he seems to be saying the African National Congress is committing the same mistake that they committed under President Jacob Zuma. And in a letter that I think is quite wide-ranging in terms of, the subject matters discussed, President Mbeki seems to be warning the African National Congress that it is drifting more and more apart from the people that it claims to lead the people of South Africa. And
is Phala Phala alone what will influence how much further the electorate or the public drifts away from the ANC, or do people have more pressing issues that affect them at a more bread and butter issue or level, that the ANC has simply failed to deliver on, even from the Mbeki presidency to the Zuma presidency and now to the Ramaphosa presidency, and that may perhaps be why they're so turned off by the party?
Yes, the Phala Phala issue is quite critical, Mbeki, in the sense that it talks to how the African National Congress, particularly the executive arm of its government, is exercising power. So while there could be other issues, for example, issues to do with the service delivery at the various levels of government, the various spheres of government, there could be other issues to do with how the African National Congress is addressing or failing to address some of the pressing matters in South Africa, such as poverty, unemployment, and many others. But this particular matter, for me, is quite critical in the sense that it talks to how those that have been entrusted with the responsibility of governing the country are exercising the powers given to them.
And as damaging as Phala Phala is, President Ramaphosa still has to face multiple investigations by law enforcement agencies, among them as well. Former President Mbeki says that if the party is confident that its leader would be able to withstand scrutiny as far as impeachment proceedings, they should have allowed for that to happen. If indeed he's clean, he would emerge as such. Should the ANC reflect on that, and what can it actually do about it at this point in hindsight?
I think what the ANC should do is to look at their line of argument that they have always been advancing, which is to say that there are institutions that have been tasked to deal with the matter. Because what the former president is essentially saying is that by blocking parliamentary processes as they are doing, they are actually denying the parliament from exercising its constitutional role of exercising oversight on the executive. So in essence, what Mbeki is saying, and by the way, he doesn't spare the deputy president in his letter because he says the deputy president's understanding of democracy, I think, needs to be revisited. Because I think you would know what the deputy president said in response to a question from the DA member. So in essence, what I'm saying, Mbeki, is that the former president is simply saying the ANC needs to look at allowing the parliament, which is a representative of the South African people in the governance of the country.
He also takes aim at the ANC caucus position that law enforcement agencies, which Paul Mashatile, as Deputy President, repeated this line during his question and answer session last week, that law enforcement agencies should be allowed, or the agency should be allowed to conduct their investigations independently into what happened at Phala Phala. And what Mbeki does is question whether or not they've recovered from the hollowing out of the last decade and a half or so. Can we really say that they have?
I think that's a difficult one, Mbeki. But I think what the former president is advancing in that argument is that some of these institutions that are expected to undertake investigative processes to establish what really happened with the Phala Phala matter are, under the control of the executive. And what an investigation by the parliament would bring, which is a little bit different, is that it's coming from an institution within our democracy that is tasked, with an oversight role on the executive, and also, maintaining checks and balances in terms of how the executive, particularly the head of state and government, must exercise powers.
Is it not ahistorical, though, to limit the conduct of the ANC on the issue of Phala Phala and the Nkandla issue to those years of the Zuma presidency and the Ramaphosa presidency? Because even when former President Mbeki was the leader of the party, it was not unfamiliar for the party's MPs and broader leadership to close rank during times of criticism, and he made many decisions around, for example, the issue of HIV and AIDS, even when there were questions around whether the arms deal situation should proceed or not, and whether it was done lawfully. The ANC, even in those years, protected its leader in essence, regardless of the questions, did it not?
That may as well have been the case. But Mbeki, I think let's be fair and let's look at the issues that the former president is raising. My take is for us to ask a question as to whether he's raising legitimate issues and genuine issues that need to be discussed or not. If he is raising genuine issues that need to be discussed, I think it is just prudent for South Africans, for the African National Congress leadership, and all that have an interest in these matters, to just look at what the former president is saying and take the issues on the basis of their merit or demerit.
And I was not by any means suggesting that the questions aren't valid. What I was trying to do is put it all in its historical context to say that ANC MPs in Parliament did not start closing rank around their leader with the current one or the one before him, which is why I went back all those years. But you make a good point, because now Fikile Mbalula, the SG of the ANC, says they're going to meet with Thabo Mbeki. They've told other members of the party not to respond to his writing in public. The party will meet, speak to him, and thereafter we're expecting some communique, perhaps to tell us what was agreed and whether they found a middle ground or not. But do you expect anything to change, precisely because this is a governing party that's had such a long history of standing by its leaders and has made it clear that even when it comes to whether they stay or go, they will go when the ANC has had enough of them.
I do not expect a different take from the African National Congress even after their meeting, because they have to defend their position. Because remember, politics is about interests. It's about also, position, oneself, or positioning an institution to, be in a position of power. So I would expect the ANC not to move very much, but I'm sure they will have time to contemplate on the matters that former President Thabo Mbeki has raised, which, if I may make this point, Tembekile, what the former president is saying is that the African National Congress may engage in this process of self-preservation in power, but as they are doing that, they must be careful that they are alienating themselves from the people of South Africa, whom, by the way, they expect votes from come 2024. And what he is saying, in my opinion, he is warning the African National Congress from, from getting into the same, problems or the same challenges that former liberation movement has fallen into across, the African continent, where, after some time in power, they end up, focusing more on, what will get them to retain power more than that which is for their countries.
Professor Ricky Mukonza, always good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time.